Good evening and welcome to the Net International Church Incorporated, located at 2308 North Main Street in Somerville, South Carolina. On behalf of our pastors, Dr. Sean and Pastor Celeste Larbo, we welcome you to this Encore Bible Study presentation with our very special guests, Drs. Darren and Lorna Alexander. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to like and share this live stream and tag a friend to join us for a very meaningful and important discussion on mental health. Thank you again for joining us, and Bible study will begin momentarily.
To the Net International Church Bible Study. I hope you've been with us all year for this year of wisdom as we probe through the book of Proverbs and learned so much from King Solomon and the wise men that God had write that book. In the midst of that, God has led us in a couple of areas because we're following wisdom. In Proverbs chapter 4, verse 5 and 7 through 7 tells us, get wisdom, it's the principal thing, and in all of your getting, get an understanding. And in that process, God has led us and showed us through the lens of wisdom that the problem, one of the challenges with getting an understanding is strictly mental health. There's some challenges for all of us in the body of Christ, out of the body of Christ, in our homes, in our families, in our marriages, on our jobs, in our businesses, in the school system. If you don't believe there's a mental health issue, go to any public school and then go to a private school and you'll find out it could be worse. This is a serious subject and it's the enemy strategy of sowing discord. Everyone is offended by chewing gum, by toothpaste tops. The simplest things are offending so many people, and all it is not getting an understanding. And then in the process, the next step we learned on last week is they end up getting stressed out. Then they end up getting burned out because no one understands me. No one will listen to me or hear me. Then tonight we'll find out that stress and that burnout leads into anxiety and it leads into depression. And by the way, Christians, depression and anxiety is real. And by the way, we, the Christians, literally do have the answer, the antidote to depression and anxiety. We really do have answers. It's written in our word. You're going to hear the word of God tonight, and you're going to hear from the heartbeat of those on the front line of anxiety and depression. Don't miss. But take a moment and share right now. You don't have to even ask. Just share with everyone you know on Facebook and let God do the rest. Call your family members. Get your sisters, your brothers, your aunties in the house. Get them on the phone, no matter what state they're in. We're here for you on the web so that this can go all the way to Alaska, all the way over to the Netherlands. Get in touch with your people and tell them don't miss what God is about to do in their life tonight. With that in mind, Father, I thank you so much for caring about us. You said, Lord, that you know the number of the hairs of strands of hair on our head. Who in the world wouldn't serve a daddy, a God like that? That means you know our most intimate moments. You know our silent frustrations. You know our inward challenges. You know how we wound ourselves. You know how we destroy our own self-esteem. And then we attract others that continue to walk on us like a mat. But Lord, you have answers. Now, tonight, I pray that every heart is mush, like a sponge, ready to receive what God has anointed and appointed for such a time as this. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. You're in the hands of Dr. and Dr.
All right. Thank you, Pastor. Good evening to the Net family and visiting friends, family. First of all, we just want to say thank you for those who joined last week when we talked about stress and burnout. And you will see how that kind of correlates with anxiety and depression tonight. But before we get started, we just wanted to say, first of all, is please understand that some people love chaos and some people love to function in chaos. But please, please, please do not let other people steal your joy or turn you away from what you were taught. And most of all is mental illness is a word that people hate to talk about. A lot of people feel like it gives kind of a negative stigma to them. And me and Dr. Warner both, we just want you to know that mental health is something that half of people walking around you today probably have and don't even realize it. And so please don't get down on yourself because your doctor or someone said that or diagnosed you with a mental illness or even said you need to go see and get checked for to see if you even have a mental illness, because that's actually smart, because what you're doing is getting help for yourself before your life becomes unmanageable. That's the key, is before your life becomes unmanageable, because Dr. Lorna and myself, we see a lot on the back end, when people's life is already unmanageable. But for those people who have already went to their doctors, was seeking help, and you finally got diagnosed, now you know where the problem is. So now you can work on fixing it. And that's the goal. Now that it has been identified, now we're here to share some information with you that will help you get to the point to where you can fix the problem, but definitely where you're going to be able to identify some of the contributing factors and some of the triggers to help you kind of avoid it and manage it. And first, we're talking about anxiety and depression. And when we look at anxiety and depression, and although we're reading from the slides, we'll make sure that those who would like a copy or some of the handouts, that we'll make sure that you get them next week when the training is over. But for tonight, we are talking about anxiety and depression. And one of the slides that we're pulling from says many individuals go through life and experiences, different life and experiences. And Dr. Lorna is going to talk about that.
So, with a lot of us throughout life, we have different types of experiences. Sometimes we experience self-doubt, anxiety, duress. Sometimes we feel defeated. Sometimes we feel uncertain, burnout and stress. So, stress and anxiety and depression changes the way we think and the way we feel. So how do we get there? So if you can pull up Matthew 6, verse 34, talks about in terms of anxiety, therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day its own trouble. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, about how not to be anxious and be in the present and don't worry about tomorrow. So in doing so, sometimes we have to be able to learn how to identify some of the symptoms of anxiety. And anxiety disorders are one of the most common mental health disorders, and it's actually found in a lot of nearly all other mental health disorders. So with anxiety, some of the symptoms, you have your mental symptoms, and then you also have your physical symptoms. With some of our mental symptoms, we tend to worry. We tend to have a nervous fear. Sometimes with anxiety, we get confusion. We get confused about certain things. Sometimes we may feel that certain things are not normal or they're not real. And sometimes we tend to continuously think about something to the point where we're just so distracted.
Right. And then when we look at the other side, then we look at the physical component. And when we talk about the physical side, chest pain, a lot of people will be feeling that pain in their chest and they think it's a stroke or a heart attack. But however, when you went to the emergency room or you talked to your doctor, then they told you that it was related to anxieties. And people can, get to that worry state enough to where it does cause that physical pain and those symptoms. So chest pain, shortness of breath, trembling more than often, that numbness or that tingling in your fingers, in your toes, and your legs, sweating. If you know that you normally don't sweat that much, but all of a sudden when you get in front of that particular supervisor or you get in front of that particular person, that neighbor, and you start sweating, then that can be related to anxiety, as well as just a nervous stomach. A lot of people develop nervous stomachs when their anxiety gets high, as well as dizziness, and some experience nausea to the point to where they're throwing up. And racing heartbeat is common, and people rush to the ER. Matter of fact, we had a few clients last week that was exhibiting some of these same symptoms, and they said, "No, I got to go to the emergency room. I think I'm having a stroke and a heart attack." By the time they got there, the doctor said, "No, you're having an anxiety attack." And so he said the EKG, everything was fine. This is more the physical, but it stemmed from the mental in the beginning. So that's why it's important that our mental wellness, that we do whatever we can to make sure that our mental wellness is in order. And also, when we look at the different types of anxiety and we look at depression, I just want to briefly go over some of the main types of anxiety disorders, just so you're familiar with them. The first one we have is what we call generalized anxiety. And when we talk about generalized anxiety, what we mean is that those individuals who overthink things. They overthink plans, they overthink solutions, and most of all, they worry about the safety and security of others, but they take it a step further and they often worry about, okay, I think something bad is going to happen. And they will continue to stay on that and worry themselves to death. And that's more the generalized anxiety disorder. And then we go and we have the panic disorder. And so when you talk about panic disorder, any event that's going to cause an individual to have that shortness of breath, or they feel like that the walls are closing in on them, they're panicking because they feel that they can't do anything. The situation is not going to change. And so, but what the panic does also is it triggers a lot of other things, because now you're going to bring back in the generalized anxiety piece. And also you can trigger the depressed moods with the panic disorder. And then we come down to social anxiety disorder. And this one's huge, because when people come up to you and they say, "You know what, I know there's only 8 people in there, but I really would rather stay outside." Please don't force them to go in there, because they might not have been diagnosed yet, but socially, you're already seeing the warning signs. And we're going to go over some of that too. But when somebody their palms are already sweating, and you can tell that they're nervous and they're anxious, and they don't want to go into a crowd, please, please, please respect that. Because even if they haven't been diagnosed yet, the warning sign is there. So they're having more of the social anxiety. Some people have social anxieties, they can't go in the malls. It's just too many people. Some people can't go into movie theaters. I know several people that go shopping late at night when there's only one or two people in the grocery store. They go to Walmart 24 hours because they don't want to be around all those people. And then we look at the different specific phobias, and that's when you have people that fear certain places, or like we mentioned earlier, that they feel like they're enclosed, the place is too small. Another specific phobia may be going to school. You have some children, grandchildren, they may come up to you and they may just say, Mom, Dad, today I don't know what it is, but I just can't go. And you don't research it any deeper. But maybe they're having those anxieties because they're being bullied or they're being picked on and they just don't want to go to school, or somebody already told them and threatened them that if you come back to school, then we're going to beat you up or what have you. So some of those phobias are real. There are people who are scared of airplanes, that they will not get on the airplane to save their life. That is a phobia for them. Some people are scared of nature, even though nature is a beautiful thing, but some people don't like going camping. Some people don't like going canoeing. So those are other forms of phobia. And also we have my favorite, because this is probably me, more OCD, obsessive compulsive. That's those people that have to have everything in order. That's those people that when you go in their houses, their cabinets, all their labels are facing each other. They know, which is me, so everything is facing the front. If somebody moves one can of beans, I go nuts if they don't replace it. And that's more my OCD, because I don't like to see an empty spot, So I can own that, because when we own what we have, then we know how to deal with it. So OCD, and there's some people that have more of an extreme OCD where they got to wash their hands 5 times a day. I know a person right now, if you put a bottle of hand sanitizer on this table, it will be gone in 30 minutes. That's how bad their OCD is, because they feel like there's germs everywhere, so they can't take it. And the one that concerns me the most out of all of them is the last one, which is more the PTSD. That's more the post-traumatic stress. And the reason why that one's real concerning is because you deal with children and adults that experience a lot of childhood trauma, and a lot of traumatic experiences, rather it's been in the war, or rather it's been at the workplace, rather it's in their community. But post-traumatic stress is something that if individuals don't get help for that they will continue to spiral and beat themselves up over and over again, of thinking that people don't understand them, that feeling of hopelessness and worthlessness. And so many other things can spiral from that. So these are just the main types of anxiety disorders and what can come from those. Dr. Warner?
Yeah, so with a lot of our clients who are experiencing anxiety, is what we do is we work with them with their thinking. So usually anxious thoughts are associated with distorted thinking. So sometimes with the distorted thinking, the anxious thoughts, what they're doing is they're creating an expectation in their mind that the worst is going to happen. Nothing's ever happened, but they're already creating a scenario that they feel stifled. They can't breathe. And what that does is it encourages a mindset that coping with the situation is going to be difficult, because they've already played it out in their mind without even it going through it. So what it is just really inaccurate thoughts. And usually anxious people often imagine that people are judging them. They're criticizing them, or they feel like they're being treated unfairly, or they're being treated harshly. So a lot of times there may be unrealistic and inaccurate beliefs in their thought process about themselves, maybe about others, And, it leaves them feeling inadequate and incompetent, and undesirable, or they're not fitting in with others. But it's about a lot of the inaccurate thoughts, the things that they're telling themselves.
And also, they have a lot of people who get severe anxiety like that. They view themselves as a victim in many situations. And they may not be the victim in every situation, but they look at that one situation that they were the victim. And that comes back into play over and over again. And then they accuse other people of misunderstanding them. And that's when we get it. People on the outside is when they say things like, just forget it, you don't understand. Or either I'll deal with it myself. Don't stress over it. I know what I'm doing. Because what they're trying to do at that point is push people away. And because it makes them feel better when they can tell people that, well, I tried to get help and nobody would listen. But we know that's not the truth. So that's why we can't give up, because that's what we call self-defeating behaviors. That's something that they continuously beat themselves up over and over. And then they go back to what they know. And sometimes what they know is to be defensive and not let people in.
So with some of those inaccurate thoughts and the way we speak, the way we speak has a lot to do, the way we think has a lot to do with the way we feel, has a lot to do with the way we act. It's cognitive behavior. So the way we think has a lot to do with the way we feel, has a lot to do with the way we act. So in doing so, a lot of individuals who are experiencing anxiety or have anxious thoughts, you might hear them say, but what if this happens? What if this happens? That what if? So they're always having those anxious thoughts. So how we usually work with a lot of our clients is we have to change their thought process and their words. So change talk, that's what I talk about. Change talk, change the way you talk. Instead of saying, I can't do it, saying, you know what, I may not know now, but I just need help. Or I can't go with you. Saying, oh yeah, I'd love to go with you, but now may not be the right time. So change talk. So how do we change our thinking? So we look at the 5 R's. Let's start recognizing our negative thoughts. Are our negative thoughts getting in the way? So the first R is recognize your negative thought. The second R is refute that negative thought. The third R is replace those negative thoughts with positive thoughts. The fourth R is rehearse the positive substitution, because we're creatures of habit. We keep saying the same things. And then the fifth R is repeat the process as necessary. So what we're doing is we're changing our talk, recognizing some of those negative statements. So as we change our talk, as we change our thinking, it changes the way we feel, which changes the way we behave.
And then we also look at managing the symptoms. Okay, so we know that we have the anxiety. We know that we're feeling depressed. It may be depressed moods. It may be major depression. But we know what we're feeling. So how do we manage that? And what we do, first, you want to take inventory of your anxiety. Try to pinpoint the pattern. Try to pinpoint when is your anxiety the worst? Is it when you're at work? Is it when you're at the grocery store? Is it when you're working with children? You have to pinpoint where the anxiety is coming from. And then what we like for people to do is kind of keep a journal and a record about it so that you can reflect back. Because once you can identify the pattern, then you can start correcting the process. You want to resist the urge to avoid. If you know that normally it's easy to avoid certain things. I know people that refuse to go to the mailbox and check their mail. They just won't do it. They'll wait on their son to come home or their daughter to come home or a neighbor. But they have that fear that if they go out there, that they're going to get hit by a car. Even though you and I know, could that potentially happen? Sure. But that can happen to anybody. But what are the chances? What is the percentage that you're going to get hit by a car going to your mailbox? But remember, people that have that high anxiety and that fear or phobia, it doesn't matter what we think. To them, they're telling you how they feel and they're telling you what's going on with them. So that means we have to do our due diligence and do what we can to help them out. And one way you can do that, walk with them to the mailbox. Show them that everything is safe and it's going to be okay. Walk with them out there. Or maybe going to the grocery store with somebody. But what you don't want to do is when they say, that's fine, I'm just not going to go. And you say, okay, that's fine then. Your mail will just sit there until you decide to go get it. Because that's more negative. So we want to be proactive, which is one of the next things, than reactive. Let's be proactive. Let's not react to their anxiety or what we call a psychotic episode that they may have. We don't want to react to that. We want to be proactive and see what we can do to help them get to a better place. Because remember, the goal is to encourage a person to be able to take a healthy risk. Because like Dr. Lorna said earlier, those distorted thoughts, remember, they already perceive that what's going on in their mind is real. So as friends, as family, as neighbors, we have to do what we can to help them get over that. And sometimes it's simply as walking them to the post office, to their mailbox, or taking them to the store, maybe taking them to the post office.
Sometimes when people are worrying, and I talked about that what if, and you can do truth telling. If you have someone in your life who is experiencing anxiety and they say, what if, and you can work with them saying, okay, what if, what would be the worst thing that could happen? Let them think about it. Well, this could be it. Well, is that really the worst? So you're talking them through and seeing if there's any truth to what they're being anxious about. Because generally, sometimes, it could be real or it could be very unrealistic. So talking them through and helping them problem solve. But practicing relaxation techniques in advance is so important. If I know that I'm going to be in an area with a lot of people and I know I might get anxious, because we get anxious for certain things, doesn't necessarily mean that we're suffering from anxiety, because we do get anxious, because usually anxious thoughts can also come from the unknown. And when we don't know the unknown, we start, questioning what's going to happen next. So practice relaxation techniques, deep breathing to calm yourself down. Find something that works for you. For some of our clients, we do something called grounding. Grounding is you're utilizing your 5 senses. So things that you see, because then you want them to stay in that moment. Things that you see. Look at 5 things that are blue. I don't know, things that you see. What do you smell? Smell the things that are around you. What do you hear? What sounds do you hear? What do you taste? So what you're doing is you're trying to keep them present in that moment. So looking at some relaxation techniques. What I love is laughing at yourself. Ooh, I love laughing at myself.
She does it all the time. And I got to laugh too, even though it's not even funny.
Yeah, so...
For support, see? I support her.
and a huge factor for managing symptoms is cultivate a spiritual life. Mm-hmm. That is a huge factor in managing your symptoms. Review your gratitude list. I know last time I talked about a gratitude list. Is review your gratitude list, because usually when an individual becomes anxious, they're so focused on the negative, when we have so many things to be thankful for.
Yeah. And also give yourself credit for the things that you've been able to do well. Sometimes we spend so much energy focusing on the negative, but even though if your life is not going the direction that you want it to go, give God the glory and the praise for where you are at, because there are some other people out there that's worse off. So when you can wake up in the morning, you may not have a car, but if you have a roof over your head, that's a blessing. You may not have the job you want, but if you have a job, that's a blessing. So we have to also stop fighting, ourselves and beating ourselves up because we're not where we want to be. But as long as we're taking those steps to get there, then we're doing good. But we have to also be patient because patience is what helps. And you want to also avoid negative people. And the reason why I'm saying this is because your day can be going well and you've done everything that we've talked about and been practicing. And all of a sudden, you get home and you get a call from a friend and they just unleash everything on you. And right then, your day just shifted. You were having a great day. Now, guess what? That friend that you talk to, maybe they don't even know that you suffer from anxiety or depression because you never told them. But now you just have to absorb their problems. And now you're trying to help somebody else out and you can barely help yourself. So being truthful is also helpful in situations.
What I love is practicing being optimistic. And I do so, I tell this a lot to my parents because what we say, our kids absorb, our kids listen, and then they practice those behaviors. When I say practice being optimistic, and I'll give myself for an example of one time when I was a single parent, and there was a time that I looked at my checkbook and I thought, how am I going to feed my children? It was very heart-wrenching. How am I going to feed my children? And, my kids could tell that there were things that we did not have and we were doing without. And when my son asked me, Mom, are we poor? And I said, oh no, we're very rich in love. But we're not at a point where we need to be financially, but we're going to get there. We will. So I did not want to speak those words saying, we don't have it. Because I did not want to put a barrier in him as he grows up to say, we don't have. It's changing that optimism, saying, we will have it. Not right now, but we're striving for it. So practice being optimistic and try to work actively against your fears. And that's sometimes can be stifling, but even if it's just a little bit, if you suffer from social anxiety, just going outside, checking the mailbox, saying hi to somebody, and going back little by little, exercising regularly. And, with exercise, that brings up a whole new level with health, how you think cognitively. Exercise, rest, because without rest, it's hard for us to think clearly. If you can, I love coffee, but if you can limit your caffeine, and then try to cut out alcohol if you can.
Well, actually, yeah, that's a must. Not if you can, because and this is I'm glad you mentioned that because when we talk about mental health, and we're going to mention more about medication later on, but remember, you can hurt yourself worse when you're trying to take medication and use drugs or alcohol. Whatever you were experiencing, you just magnified it 5 times. So please, 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 if you know you're taking medication, do not use drugs or alcohol. And I know that's on your label of your prescription bottle as well, but most people overlook that. But the reason why they tell you that is because remember these things that we went over earlier about dizziness, sweating, that can also be symptoms of a side effect from the combination of the medication and the drugs and the alcohol.
So what if you have a loved one who is suffering from anxiety and you want to be able to support them? Are we being hurtful or are we being helpful? So
can I read the hurt and you be the help?
Go ahead. Be the hurt.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So when we look at things not to say. And so if somebody is coming to you trying to open up and pour their heart out, this statement would be more hurtful if you say, it's not worth worrying about. Why stress over that?
But if you want to be helpful with someone who is suffering from anxiety, say, is there anything I can do to help?
So you see the difference there. Number two, if I want to be hurtful, even though that's not my mindset, but sometimes I do it by default, is I may say, everyone has anxieties. You just have it to deal with it.
But if you're trying to be helpful, you can say, that sounds so tough. I'm proud of how far you've been hanging in there.
And another hurtful statement is if I told somebody, have you tried yoga or meditation?
The helpful thing is I'm here to listen. Let me know what you need.
The other hurtful aspect may be anxiety disorder. Really? You just sound stressed to me.
And the helpful is I'm glad you're getting the support that you deserve.
So you see how you have the hurtful part and the helpful part, but just hearing us read that back and forth, can you see how damaging words can be? And all of us have experienced that, I'm sure, at one point in time. But words itself can make the difference between somebody when you leave them saying, I appreciate all your help. I'm definitely going to start. I'm going to call these crisis numbers and I'm going to get the help I need. Or the hurtful side, when you leave, somebody's going to be writing a note and saying, no one loves me. Life is too hard right now. And I don't even want to live anymore. So believe it or not, words can work positive or negative. And when we talk about depression, what is depression? Dr. Lorna, to you, what is depression?
So there are different symptoms. We'll just talk about depressive episodes. There are different symptoms, and you can have a depressed mood. Some of the symptoms, you can have sleep difficulties, a loss of interest in a lot of things that were pleasurable before. You can be tired all the time. You might feel a feeling of worthlessness. Maybe it's hard for you to concentrate. You may have recurring thoughts of death. So it's for some individuals, they have, if you notice, a significant weight change. So these are some of the symptoms of a depressive episode.
And then you have to ask yourself once again, what's causing the depression? Why do I feel this way? Why am I waking up in the morning and my first thought is, I hate life. I just don't even want to go to work today. Why are you feeling that way? So now we have to back up and see what happened the night before or the day before. Is it something that you're still holding on to because it was never resolved? And that might be the case. But when we talk about depression, remember, depression for people may differ, but it's still real. And depression can definitely pull somebody down to the lowest state that they can possibly go. And that will cause them to avoid the things that they love doing the most. Now, before they used to call you every weekend and say, hey, I'm looking forward to the movies on Friday. Are you ready? But now you call them and they say, no, I have a lot to do. I'm good. Now if they do that once, then maybe they're legitly working or something. But now if you called them 3 times and before they wouldn't miss a Friday for nothing. Now all of a sudden a month has went by and they're still in that same funk. And that's when we have to dig a little bit deeper to kind of find out what is truly going on here and to see if there's anything that you can do to really help out in this situation.
As Pastor said, that Scripture tells us a lot about anxiety and depression. So from 2 Corinthians 4, verse 8 through 9, although Christians can be, although things may be difficult, Christians can avoid deep depression. And this is one scripture that speaks to that. We are hard pressed on every side. We're hard pressed, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So fix your eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
And based on what she read as well with that scripture, now we look at the whole picture of that whole cycle of depression. And when we look at that cycle of depression, it starts off with those life stressors. We have the life stressors up here, and then the stressors turn into our thoughts. And remember, Dr. Lorna mentioned earlier, you have your thoughts, feelings, and then your actions. And so then when we have the thoughts, and then it goes to the feeling. And then remember those physical symptoms that we talked about. Now you actually start going through some of this stuff with the physical symptoms. And then you have the behavior response. Because what's going to come after those physical symptoms once you're feeling drained or frustrated or anxious or angry, you start having all these different emotions. Then you have the behavior response. And when you get to that behavior response, that could be something negative to where you're just, you lash out to people and just tell them, leave me alone. If I want your help, I'll call you. I'll ask for it. Some people will constantly try to push you away. But then the other response can be where that person is acting more like an introvert. They're just like, nope, I'm fine. Please go to work or go to sleep. Everything will be okay. But if you don't follow up on that, then that's where some of what I call the danger zone. That's when you get into that danger zone, because you may not even be able to go to sleep at night and your brain won't shut off. Why? Because you're still worried about the individual. So if you're going to be worried about them, make sure you pick that phone up or you send them that text message, but you need to let them know that you are there for them. And if they need anything, and I'm not talking about monetary, sometimes it's just listening and allowing that person to just vent, because they've already tried to talk to 10 or 12 people that instead of listening, the other people stop them and try to give them answers. And that's not what they need. Some people just want you to listen. So listening, effective listening, is one of the main keys.
Unfortunately, women are 2 times more likely to develop depression than men. So about 1 in 10 people experience depression in their time. And usually the first depressive episode can begin between the ages of 20 and 30. But, for depression, over half of those individuals who have been diagnosed with depression also suffer from anxiety. 60% of those who die by suicide suffer from depression or some related mood disorder. So that's why it's so important for us to recognize in our loved ones what those signs and those symptoms are. When we recognize if we become more aware, we have more choices. We want more choices, but we have to become aware. So if we can look at some of those symptoms and understand what it looks like, we can help others along the way, and just being there and listening to them. Physical exercise, we talked about that. That's been found to have a significant antidepressant. So get your friend and go walking, right? And then Dr.
Yes, ma'am. And when you look at that, getting your friend and going walking, that's one step. The other step is also identifying in your family. You might have a family history of anxiety and depression, and no one ever told you, but nor did you ask. So do your own homework too. Ask your dad, your mom, Matter of fact, you go back to the your grandmother, grandfather, and great grandmother and great grandfather, because what you will find out is that most of us in our family had individuals that suffered from some form of anxiety, depression. But back then, people didn't know what to call it. They just said things like, he crazy, right? Or, God's still working on him or her, right? They said things like that. Now, today, we know what it's called. But back then, it was going on way before you and I got here. I can tell you that. And so what we need to do is trace back that family, because guess what? If you do, you can change it, because back then they didn't do much interventions. Now we can do interventions to help friends and to help family. So that's what we want to do. And most of all, if you know someone, and I talked about this earlier, that is on medication, but you know that they're smoking weed or they're drinking, that is contributing to their psychoses, because until you can get them to stop using the drugs or alcohol, we really don't know what is truly causing what they're going through. It may be anxieties, it may be depression, it may be PTSD, it may be panic disorder, but that's hard to pinpoint when you have someone using alcohol and drugs, because that has the same effect on the body. That alcohol and drugs will cause your heart to rate. It will cause, your heart to increase. It will cause you to be dizzy. It will cause you to have night sweats. It will cause you to be nervous and anxious around people. Why? Because you don't want them to smell that weed on you. That's why. So you're trying to avoid them. So we're thinking it's social anxiety, but that's not the case. You're high and you just want to avoid people. So now that's what we call self-induced anxiety. So you have all these things going on. So in order to truly help someone, and you put yourself out there as part of that process of being part of their helping group, make sure you do your homework and ask them honestly, are they doing anything else that could contribute to their episode of anxiety or depression?
So we get a lot, because we also run an outpatient drug treatment facility, and a lot of individuals who will say, I've got to smoke that weed because of my anxiety. Right? So when you look at it, some individuals, they said CBD will, but THC is for psychosis. But some individuals will say, I do this because of my anxiety. Short term, it's a short term effect. But the long term consequences, when you continue to do that, it actually causes more psychosis. And so we see individuals with more psychosis go to different substances to help with their anxiety. So it increases their anxiety. So short term fix, but has a long term effect.
Right. And that long term effect, what people don't realize too is even if it does help you with your anxiety, so that's what you believe is going on, that long-term effect is the damage it has done to those lungs. Can you get that back? The damage that alcohol has done to the liver, or your kidneys, can you get that back? So that's why it's so important. Trust me, we have people that actually get mad with us, when we tell them that, oh, you've been drinking, for 20 years, you probably want to go and get an x-ray and get some blood work done to see how your kidneys are functioning and how your liver is functioning. And they'll tell me, mind your business. I didn't come here, because I want you to help me with my medical problem. And I said, but that is contributing to your medical problem, because if someone is using marijuana, alcohol on a daily basis, how can your body not be affected? I mean, honestly, if all of us out here ask ourselves, how can your body not be affected by that? And also, you have to understand the ripple effect of that use, that substance use, because now it's going to roll over into anxiety, depression, stress, burnout. But guess what else it's doing? If you are a mother who didn't realize that you were pregnant, Now look what you just done. You've been using for the past 6 or 8 months. And then when you found out you were pregnant, that was 8 weeks have already gone by and you continued to use. So now we're making decisions for our children that they never had the opportunity to make themselves.
Some of the risk factors for depression: poverty, unemployment, social isolation, and other stressful life events. But usually, we call this when it happens in our household. Maybe it's not poverty, but maybe something's going on in the household. A lot of arguing, maybe substance use, or someone in the household is suffering from mental health and is just withdrawing. When children see that, we call that adverse childhood experiences. That's a form of trauma. And so when they see their parents or individuals arguing, even though we as adults saying, it's normal, we argue, but how the children perceive it might be totally different. They may start blaming themselves. They may start cutting. They may just start doing other things because for them it's chaos. And so when they go through that and they feel that their life is in an influx, it's so chaotic that they can actually get depression and be diagnosed with depression. So even though maybe you're not suffering from poverty, but if there's anything that's going on in the household, the kids suffer and can develop that as well.
Absolutely. And remember that people don't fake a mental illness, they fake being okay. And so that's what we have to separate, because people feel that if I tell people how I'm feeling, if I tell people that I get mad, if I tell people I often go in a closet and just cry for 5 hours, their fear is somebody's going to look at them and say, you're crazy, or either, you need help. You need to go get help, and we don't want people to feel negative about a mental illness, because a mental illness is something that if you have it, it's better to seek the help, the professional help you need, so you can pinpoint what it is so that you can get help for it. And that's what makes you stronger. And that's what brings in, instead of the negative, now you're stronger. Now the hopefulness is there. Now more positivity comes into play, because if I know I have something, but there's a way for me to get through it, then that's what I want. That's just like people suffering from cancer. I mean, they didn't ask for it, but I can guarantee if you talk to anybody that's a survivor, that they're going to tell you that it was a blessing that they had the technology and the doctors and the chemo and everything they had to go through to beat it. And that's what we look for, is we want to put people in a position to let's beat mental illness. Let's beat anxiety. Let's beat depression. Let's beat low self-esteem. Let's beat stress. These are things that we can beat, but it's working together is how we're going to be able to do it.
It just reminded me something, Dr. Alexander, when you mentioned about cancer and survivor. So you have cancer and mental illness. They're both illnesses. But when you have someone who's going through cancer, the words that you hear are, they're strong, they're survivors. It's everything positive. But when you hear about mental illness, it's everything negative. It's still an illness. Why can't they be those same things?
Absolutely.
So usually when we're going back to individuals, recognizing individuals, with someone with depression, I'll say they don't fake the funk, right? They don't. What they do is, or they do fake the funk. Sometimes they may smile at you when they're really going through hell. Excuse me. They may say that they're busy, but they're really going through a mental breakdown. They may joke and laugh at you, and laugh with you, because they know what it's like to feel nothing. They empower others in their low moments because they know what it feels like to be powerless. They work hard and uphold their responsibilities only to collapse when they get home. They always care for others because they know what it's like to struggle in silence.
And I know that time is catching us, but Dr. Warner, close with that last slide because I think that's something important.
Okay, so this is from Psalm 31, 22 to 32, verse 2. You know, we talk about release from depression caused by guilt came from confession and seeking God's forgiveness. And it says, "For I said in my haste, I am cut off from before your eyes. Nevertheless, you heard the voice of my supplications when I cried out to you. O love the Lord, all you his saints, for the Lord preserves the faithful and fully repays the proud person. Be of good courage, and he shall be strengthened your heart. All you who hope in the Lord, blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man whom the Lord does not impute inequity, and in those whose spirit is not no deceit. I acknowledged my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave me of my sin." So what we're trying to do in this session is really develop hope. And hope is a mindset and a belief. Hopelessness is also a mindset and a belief. Helplessness is a series of actions or non-actions directly related to a hopeless mindset. So we're trying to develop hope.
Absolutely. And I think from what we all heard today, and I believe it's safe to say that when you hear the scripture, when you hear what we talk about, we are all God's children. And this tells us that God knew that there was going to be some of us to suffer, that we have to go through this mental illness. And he knew that it was going to happen. So what we have to do is be good stewards with each other. And if you're not the one suffering from a mental illness, then help someone else out who is, because it can strike any one of us at any given time. Any given time. You may be having a good day today, but tomorrow it will change and you're going to need somebody. So please, please, please do not look at mental illness as anything negative. Remember, for every negative, there's a positive. So let's turn it around and let's help those that need the help. Thank you.
Wow. Come on, everyone at home that is having your share parties. We appreciate some of your comments on Facebook and YouTube. You're going to have an opportunity for more of this. We saw the comment where there was a number of individuals asking for more for us to continue this. We're at the hour now. Just to remind everyone, this is Christmas. This is that holiday season. And we're going to save lives during this season. You have the opportunity to come and give blood on the 13th, right here at the net at the church. We'll be here with our blood drive and our partnership with the Red Cross. Go online, just go on the Red Cross online and look up the net, and you can sign up. We want to fill up all the slots. It's Christmas, y'all. Let's fill up all the slots and save some lives. And then you also have the opportunity to save some mental status and some lives mentally. Just with the information tonight, I was blown away at some of the points that were being dropped. And I have to go myself and beg some people's pardon and tell some people I'm sorry for the way I've responded. And the moments where I've been hurtful rather than helpful. I wrote that down. I'm struggling with even preaching a message Let's beat mental health. Why are we sitting here as the body of Christ and telling people to pray about it and allowing mental health to beat us? We have the ultimate power on our side, but it's going to take wisdom. It's going to take a combination of God's word, His spirit, His power and anointing, and it's going to take the combination of some skilled, trained individuals to show us the right way. Amen? So mental health from this day forward out of this house is not a problem. It is just a condition, just like cancer or anything else. We pray extensively, very fervently, to beat cancer. So I know we can pray. And the effectual, fervent prayers of the righteous of this house shall, not maybe. I said not maybe. I'm talking to someone right now at your home. Not maybe. It shall avail much. You have a condition and an issue in your home. Bring it to the house. Bring it here. Bring it to the net. Don't be ashamed. Watch God do His thing. We'll see you on Sunday. Continue to enjoy this holiday season. Jesus is the reason.
We invite you to be our guest on this Saturday, December the 31st, as we worship in the new year. Service will begin at 10 o'clock p.m. and join us on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for our first Sunday communion service.